I'm an ADP fan, and I don't understand why people think Tarzan is racist. I can answer that. Just stay here and listen. If you genuinely want to understand, stay. First, I'm black, and no, I don't think Tarzan is trying to be racist. What I do think is that he's purposefully engaging in cultural appropriation. There's a difference. There is nothing wrong with liking another culture. There's nothing wrong with wearing braids, dressing a certain way, or appreciating black culture. On their own, none of those things are the problem. The issue is when all of it gets combined into a full-on performance. Before anything else, I need to make one thing very clear, because people keep mixing this up on purpose or out of ignorance. You do not have to be racist to participate in cultural appropriation. That's the point a lot of you are missing. I'm not here saying Tarzan hates black people. I'm not saying he's walking around thinking he's superior. Tarzan is a Korean man, but his entire character pulls from what people stereotype as black. The slang, the mannerisms, the styling, all of it together. When he does it, people call it cool, refreshing, different, something new. But the thing is, it's not new. This has been happening in K-pop for years, decades even, and every time, fans act like it's groundbreaking, when it's really just the same thing recycled. Why is this wrong? It's uncomfortable. Because when black people exist the same way naturally, it's treated as normal, expected, or stereotypical. But when an idol puts it on, suddenly it's cool and new. That's the double standard. Another big part of the issue is that this character is something he can take off, if he wanted to. He could wake up tomorrow and decide he likes Japanese culture, or some other culture, and just switch. POC don't get that choice. This isn't something we put on and take off when it stops being trendy. Think about it like this. If I, as a black woman, loved Korean culture so much that I started fully transforming myself to fit Korean beauty standards, copying the makeup, the styling, obsessing over anything branded as Korean because it's cool, people would call that weird. They'd call me a Koreaboo, and they wouldn't be wrong. So this isn't about hatred. It's not about calling him racist. It's about acknowledging that turning a culture into an aesthetic, especially one that already gets stereotyped and punished in real life, is a problem. In other words, what I am saying is that he is benefiting from a curated version of blackness without having to live with the consequences of being black. That's cultural appropriation. Liking black culture is not the issue. Braids alone aren't the issue. Clothes alone aren't the issue. Music taste alone isn't the issue. The problem is when all of it is stacked together into a character, adding an accent, faking the slang, the styling, and much more. Then it's marketed as something cool, edgy, and refreshing because it's coming from an Asian idol. That disconnect is the problem. Now let's talk about what really made the situation nasty. Fatu, she spoke generally about Korean men adopting exaggerated black aesthetics and why it feels uncomfortable and appropriative. And what happened? His fans immediately harassed her, calling her slurs, telling her to go back to her country. Being openly racist, loud and violent in her comments. So let me ask a very simple question. If you're trying to prove that someone isn't racist, why are you being racist to do it? You cannot argue that someone loves black culture while his fan base is comfortable attacking black people for speaking up. Those two things do not coexist peacefully. And before anyone says he can't control his fans, sure, but silence is still a choice. If you truly respect the culture you're borrowing from, you would at least acknowledge the harm being done in your name, especially when a black person is being targeted directly. This is also why I genuinely believe ADP is going to struggle long term. When one member is this polarizing, that backlash never stays contained. You're already seeing it spill onto other members, and eventually it'll be the rest of them. That's how this always goes. Back on topic, this isn't one isolated thing. It's a pattern layered on top of an already uncomfortable image. And that's why people are side-eyeing him. Not because they're haters. Not because they're jealous. Not because they don't get it. But because this isn't new. Because our culture keeps being treated like an aesthetic. And because the people calling it out are now being attacked. It only moves us backwards. And that's the issue. That's always been the issue. Feel free to ask questions if you are confused. I repeated myself a lot, just in case.